Shalom, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem. Israel launches a wide-scale surprise attack on Hamas in the Gaza Strip after the terror group failed to accept any of the proposals that aim to secure the release of hostages. The United States threatens the Islamic Republic of Iran with devastating consequences for its support of the Houthis in Yemen. Israel launches aerial strikes against military assets in southern Syria. Israel will no longer grant the Islamist Hamas a chance to procrastinate without paying a heavy price for its obstinate refusal to release hostages from its terror tunnels in the Gaza Strip. The IDF launched a wide-scale surprise attack overnight against dozens of Hamas terror targets, to include commanders, senior Politburo officials, and terrorist infrastructure. Among others, the commander of Hamas's security services in the Gaza Strip, Mahmoud Abu Watfeh, and two members of Hamas's Politburo were reportedly killed. Meanwhile, during the Nevatim summit, which aims to promote the development of the Negev region, Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar essentially asserted that Hamas miscalculated when it evidently thought that it could reject President Donald Trump's proposals for the release of hostages with impunity.
בשבועיים וחצי האחרונים אנחנו נקלענו למבוי סתום, שגם אין אש וגם אין חזרת חטופים, ואת זה ישראל לא יכולה לקבל. נעשו מאמצים כנים. השליח של הנשיא טראמפ, סטיב ויטקוף, הציע שתי הצעות שונות. החמאס דחה את שתיהן, ולמעשה, להערכתי, אם היינו ממשיכים באיזושהי המתנה, היה ממשיך לא לזוז, וזה מאוד הזכיר לי את ה-20 יום הראשונים, אני זוכר, אחרי ה-7 באוקטובר ועד לכניסה, הכניסה הקרקעית לרצועת עזה, כי הייתה אז איזושהי תקווה או איזשהו רצון, אולי החמאס יתעשת והוא יגיע לעסקה לפני זה. כל עוד שזה לא קרה, שום דבר לא קרה.
During a Q&A session carried out by Israel's conservative broadcast Channel 14, Jerusalem's top diplomat stressed that Hamas will have to learn the hard way that it won't be able to bring Israel to its knees. Minister Sa'ar went on to explain Israel's decision to resume its military operations versus the internationally designated terror group Hamas.
החזרה לאש היא המשך המחויבות שלנו להשיג את יעדי המלחמה. ומלחמה זה לא אידיאולוגיה. אם אתה יכול להשיג את אותם היעדים בדרך אחרת, בסדר גמור. אבל אם אתה לא יכול להתקדם בדרך האחרת, אתה חוזר לנתיב של חידוש הפעולות הצבאיות. והמטרות נשארו אותן מטרות. החזרת כל החטופים, חיסול היכולות השלטוניות והצבאיות של חמאס ברצועת עזה, והסרת האיום מרצועת עזה על ביטחון ישראל ועל אזרחי ישראל.
Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., U.S. State Department spokeswoman Tammy Bruce was asked by a Palestinian journalist whether Israel's decision to cease the delivery of humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip constitutes a war crime.
For the horrible suffering of the Gazan people, we know where that sits. It sits with Hamas. We know that within the ceasefire, and why we fight for the ceasefire and want it to continue, is in fact to make sure that food and aid is moved into that region. The United States has led the way in that regard.
It is important to highlight that in accordance with Article 23 of the Geneva Convention, Israel's obligation to allow the free passage of consignments is subject to the condition that it is satisfied that there are no serious reason for fearing that the consignments may be diverted from their destination, meaning that Hamas does not seize hold of the humanitarian aid, and that a definite advantage may accrue to the military efforts or economy of the enemy, such as Hamas exploiting the humanitarian aid to soar up its income, and by doing so, exert its rule over the population of the Gaza Strip. Therefore, in accordance with international humanitarian law, taking into account Hamas's sinister exploitation of incoming humanitarian aid for its own survival, Israel is not obligated, irrespective of international outcry, to provide any goods into the Gaza Strip. Turning to the Pentagon, where the Department of Defense Press Secretary Sean Parnell addressed the latest escalation versus the Iranian proxy Ansar Allah, which is dominated by the Houthi tribe in Yemen.
U.S. Central Command Forces initiated a series of operations consisting of precision strikes against Iran-backed Houthi targets across Yemen to restore freedom of navigation and reestablish American deterrence. For years, the Houthis have targeted U.S. military ships and aircraft. They've hit commercial ships as well, including U.S.-flagged vessels, and they threaten our personnel overseas. Houthi terrorists have launched missiles, one-way attack drones at U.S. warships over 170 times, and at commercial vessels 145 times since 2003.
Lieutenant General Alexis Grinkovich, who is the military's director of operations for the Joint Chiefs, provided an overview of the U.S. military campaign against the Houthis, stating that an initial battle damage assessment indicated that dozens of Houthi terror operatives were successfully eliminated.
On Saturday, the 15th of March, shortly after 1 p.m. Eastern Time, at the direction of the President, U.S. Central Command began precision strike operations against the Houthis to restore freedom of navigation and American deterrence. The initial wave of strikes hit over 30 targets at multiple locations, degrading a variety of Houthi capabilities. These included terrorist training sites, unmanned aerial vehicle infrastructure, weapons manufacturing capabilities, and weapons storage facilities. It also included a number of command and control centers, including a terrorist compound where we know several senior Houthi unmanned aerial vehicle experts were located. On Sunday, strike operations continued against additional headquarters locations, weapons storage facilities, as well as detection capabilities that have been used to threaten maritime shipping in the past. Today, the operation continues, and it will continue in the coming days until we achieve the President's objectives.
Meanwhile, in an exclusive interview with Fox News, U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth doubled down on the necessity to confront Houthi attacks on freedom of navigation in the strategic Strait of Bab el-Mandeb.
Global shipping, global commerce, when it's threatened by effectively pirates and piracy, and you have to divert and go an extra 2 weeks costing millions and then eventually billions of dollars, you're being held hostage by a terrorist organization. Remember, the Biden administration took off the foreign terrorist organization designation of the Houthis.
That's right.
President Trump restored it. We're squeezing them economically. We are pounding them militarily. By the way, to the Houthis, this isn't a one-night thing. This will continue until you say we're done shooting at ships, we're done shooting at assets. We don't want a long, limited war in the Middle East. We don't care what happens in the Yemeni civil war. This is about stopping the shooting at assets in that critical waterway.
A subsequent statement by President Donald Trump essentially stipulates that since Iran is the enabler of the Houthis, every shot fired by the Houthis will be looked upon from this point forward as being a shot fired from the weapons and leadership of Iran, and Iran will be held responsible and suffer the consequences.
Our message to Iran is you better take this president seriously, and I think the Houthis learned that the hard way this past weekend. As I said in my opening remarks, there's a new sheriff in town, and this president is not just going to sit on his hands and allow terrorists to launch attacks on commercial vessels and U.S. naval ships. Those actions will not be tolerated.
It is important to highlight that while the Ayatollah regime is trying to signal Washington, as if it had tried already, to dissuade the Houthis from attacking maritime shipping in an alleged effort to de-escalate tensions, the RGC continues to express its resolve to confront the United States.
ما در مقابل هر تهدیدی قاطعانه می ایستیم. و هر تهدیدی را اگر عملی شود به شدیدترین شکل پاسخ می‌دهیم، پاسخی قاطع، کوبنده و ویرانگر.
Turning to Syria, where Israel Air Force aircraft conducted an aerial strike in the northern sector of the southern Daraa governorate. According to the IDF spokesperson's unit, the targets included command centers and military sites containing weapons and military vehicles belonging to the old Syrian regime, which they are attempting to make reusable. The statement further stressed that the presence of military assets in southern Syria poses a threat to the state of Israel. Therefore, the IDF will not allow the presence of military threats in southern Syria and will operate against it. Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. TV7 Israel is a non-profit ministry with all of our productions exclusively reliant on your generosity. Therefore, if you're blessed by the content of our programs, I'd like to encourage you, support TV7 Israel with a donation. You can do so via our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. Separately, I'd like also to encourage you as ever, pray for the peace of Jerusalem and salvation of Israel. I'm Jonathan Hessen, wishing you an Erev Mevorach, and God willing, we'll see you during our next update. Until then, Shalom from Jerusalem.